the issue that I have with a lot of the hops is because I've distilled a lot of beer, and bad beer and recycled beer and beer that can't be sold for my R&D purposes. And when you distill a very hopped beer, you just get the bitterness of the hops. All the fruity notes, all of the notes that made that hop specific to that beer have disappeared or have transformed with the massive amounts of heat in the column. So for me, it's like when I taste those hops in beers, I'm kind of like, I think back to some of those bad experiences I've had distilling, and I'm like, no, it's a great beer, but it is just not for me.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to All Beer Inside. Today we are in Lasalle, Quebec, and joining me is Alex of 1769 Distillery.
Hi. Thanks,
Thank you very much for hosting us today.
No problem.
Clearly busy schedule, very busy distillery from what I'm seeing. Thank you very much on the day we're recording, a very snowy day.
Yeah.
So
snowstorm, 2 days straight.
Yeah, it's a bit of a pain in the butt, but it's Canada. We should be used to it.
Yep, exactly.
So for those who don't know 1769, tell us, what's your distillery story?
So 1769 was a project that my dad and my mom, so my parents, wanted to start when they turned 50, believe it or not. Both of my parents worked in media before, and they always enjoyed traveling to distilleries when they were traveling. My dad used to work a lot in the United States, so he'd travel to a lot of American distilleries. My mother, she in the 90s traveled all across Europe for work, so she got to visit a lot of great Scottish and Ireland and European distilleries, and big distillers back then, because in the 90s, not a lot of craft distilleries around then. So when they turned 50, my dad wanted to do something different. He was in the post-production business and he wanted to get out. And he turned to my mom and he was like, hey, let's start a distillery. My mom was like, sure, you're crazy, but sure. And so they did the work from, I think that was around 2011. So from 2011 all the way up to 2014, they were doing the groundwork, business plans. We live in Quebec and live in Montreal, so we wanted to start a distillery in Montreal, which had its own unique challenges back then. And in 2014, we got all of our licenses, so federal license or provincial license. We finally got our distillery set up in a small 2,000 square foot space in Verdun in an old industrial building. And we started doing our first R&D project, which was our first gin. Back in 2019, we realized we needed to move the distillery for numerous reasons. And we found this old building and this old complex, which is, for those of you who aren't, here with us today, it's the old Seagram's distillery in Lasalle, Quebec, which is, millions of square feet, vastly numerous amounts of buildings, original rack houses that held Crown Royal and Seagram's VO for hundreds of years. And unfortunately in 2009 was abandoned by Diageo. And in 2019, a developer bought the property and approached us and they're like, hey, we want to put a distillery in here. Would you be happy to come in and be the distillery? So all of 2020 during the pandemic, 2021, we were doing construction. And then in October 2021, we moved in here and started officially distilling around November 2021, December 2021. So we've been in here for about a year now, and we're really happy. It's been a phenomenal place. Moving from 2,000 square feet to 13,000 square feet is a very big move, but also it's nice not to have to do 3 hours of musical pallets to get to the vital pieces of equipment that I need to get to.
Yeah, it's funny too, because you mentioned it's the old Seagram's building owned by Diageo, and the highway next to it is literally called the Whisky Trench.
Yeah.
It's for those who don't know, this 200 years, I think they've been here.
Oh, yeah. So this complex was actually started in the early 20th century.
Yeah.
I don't know this. I don't remember the specific year or time frame that it was started in. But what happened was, in the story of how this place came to be, was the Brofmans and Joseph Seagram had been working together, and they bought equipment from a distillery during Prohibition, when Prohibition happened. So they they bought all the equipment from a distillery that legally couldn't operate anymore, and they moved all the equipment up here. They started actually one of the building we're in right now is one of the original buildings of the entire complex.
Okay.
The building next door to us, that's on 3-story building, is where the stills, where the collection tanks were, where shipping and receiving was. So they kind of built this entire complex piecemeal based off of how big they grew. Obviously, Joseph Seagram's left the business, and the Bronfman family, who, for any Montrealers out there, I believe the Bronfmans were the owners of the Montreal Expos, the baseball team. Yeah, we need baseball back, man. They were the ones who owned the Seagram's distillery, and unfortunately in the early 2000s they sold due to a myriad of reasons of numerous that I can't get into right now because it'll take like a whole other history lesson.
That's a full other episode.
And just bad decisions along the way. Diageo bought their portfolio, bought the distillery, used this place for a good 9 years, or about 9 to 10 years before they decided to move out, and reasons why they needed to move out were very evident. There was a lot of things that needed to be updated. Electrical needed to all be redone. Plumbing all needed to be redone. It was a long ride.
Hazmat suits because of asbestos.
No, thankfully they did remove the asbestos in the early 2000s.
Okay.
So we didn't have to deal with that, thank God.
With one plus.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the history building, my mother had mentioned, it's like, yeah, your grandfather worked here. I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, so it's crazy. And it is like, to me, it's time for Lasalle to have things like this.
Oh, yeah.
It's time for, you saw and I'm surprised that you left Verdun, but it's bigger space. Clearly, you wanted to get to a bigger space, which is the important part. And I'm guessing the kind of city of Lasalle is very welcoming to have a distillery come back.
Yes and no.
Okay.
It's sad and unfortunate that we needed to leave Verdun. I don't live in Verdun, but I basically, I was kind of raised in Verdun. My dad had another business that was in that same building, and he basically started that when I was born. So, the times that I would go with him to work or hang out with my friends, all of my hangout spots were in Verdun with them. My friends live in Verdun. So it's like, it's kind of sad that we had to move, but we tried desperately to find buildings to stay in Verdun. And for the specific type of building that we would need to move our distillery into and have the adequate amount of space and facility needs, it just wasn't there. And the only other places that really had what we needed were either all the way near the airport in the West Island, or luckily this building, but it needed a lot of work. So we decided, there is a historical draw. Being the first distillery to be back in the old Seagram's distillery is definitely something that we're really proud of being, and it's one of the reasons why we decided to make the move from Verdun to Lasalle. But it's also not that far. You're talking what? A couple of streets from them.
Yeah, exactly. It's, a quick little drive. So if you have a designated driver, it's just go here and then, or you could take a bus. You could take a bus and metro. Yeah. So we're going to try a product here or two. What are we going to try?
So we could try first our Madison Park London Dry Gin, which was our first product ever made. It's a London Dry Gin style, and the reason why we did a London Dry Gin as our first product was at the time at the SAQ, because as a Quebec distillery, we could only commercialize our products at the SAQ. We wanted to create something that was locally made here, but was very classic, was very reminiscent of some of the great British gins that are well renowned, and we wanted to try and make our own version of that. So we've got 7 botanicals in this. We've got juniper berries, coriander seeds, orange and lemon peel, cardamom, angelica root, and our specialty botanical that we use in every single gin, Grains of Paradise.
Cool.
So, actually, in Canada, we don't really have many legal definitions of what gin is, but London Dry Gin is one of those that is legally defined to be, distilled, cut with water, and that's it. Bottled at 40, at least 37.5. So this was bottled at 40, and yeah.
Awesome. As we do.
Cheers.
Toast.
Cheers.
Oh, so smooth.
This is one of my favorite gins that we make. I have so much fun making this. It's we wanted juniper forward, but also have citrus forward. And the difference between this and at the time all of the big international gins was all the big international gins are very complex, very juniper forward, very botanical heavy, and we wanted to create something that was much smoother, lighter on the botanical load, and something that people who didn't really like gin could get into it.
Smoothness is nice too. It's nice to have, you know, that nice smooth hard alcohol.
Yeah,
that's, you know, craft alcohol. That's why I'm trying more and more to support craft alcohol. I'm still like, if I'm going to a bar and I'm having a mixed drink and all they have is the mass brand stuff, I'll just deal with it.
Yeah.
But if I'm making a cocktail at home, I'd like to have specialty craft products. And now I'm noticing more and more like craft mixers as well.
Yes.
And to me, it's, you know, you can always support a local company this way. So just why aren't you doing it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think in Quebec and in Canada overall, there's a big movement to support local. But one of the big challenges that we're seeing here with a lot of local products is because we're small manufacturing, because we're small, very, you know, small batch still, even though we make larger batches than what what a lot of other small distilleries would consider to be large, there's still that element of, you know, we can't capitalize on, you know, the mass produced, you know, price savings that a lot of these big guys can. Like, you know, if you're ordering a 1.5 million bottles to ship all over the world, it's like, yeah, you're going to get a different price than, you know, the couple of bottles that I'm getting. So one of the biggest challenges with craft spirits is the price point. There's a lot of products that are at the SAQ for other reasons, but that are in the $40+ range. When, you know, if you go to the United States, you go to even Ontario, you go to a craft distillery, you're expecting to pay something in the high $30 range. Whereas in Quebec, you can really expect, if you want a good quality craft product, you're looking at paying $50+. So one of the things for us with Madison Park when we released it was we wanted to be a premium product, but we didn't want to be like, you know, a lot of the big ultra premium products. So we had priced it at a good, comfortable $43.50 at the SAQ.
What got you into distilling? Like, what made you just, you know, with your dad being in post-production and, hey, let's start a distillery, and you're like, I'll do this. So
my dad went down to the States and studied at one of the more renowned distilling crash courses called Moonshine University.
Okay.
So he learned there, and then he went and interned at I think 4 distilleries across the States. So he interned at one in North Carolina. He interned one at Seattle. I think he even interned at one in Kentucky. I can't remember.
Okay.
But he learned basically the you know, the whole business model, the science, the manufacturing process, and his background was in science, so it was very much like okay, these are the key steps you need to know for this. And that's how he started the Madison Park. He did the Madison Park, he did the RM vodka, M stands for Montreal, and he did our pink gin and a whole bunch of other recipes. And then for me, when the distillery started, I had just turned 18. So in the province of Quebec, the legal drinking age is 18, unlike everywhere else. Like in the States, it's like in 21, in Ontario, it's 19. So when I turned 18, I was like, needed a part-time job as a student. And I was like, oh, you know, I could do some stuff at the distillery. So I helped out my dad doing a lot of distillations, and I really just fell in love with the process. You know, it's a time-consuming process, but I find it very peaceful. Yes, some things can go wrong, but oftentimes if you're diligent, it's just a very zen type of manufacturing process. And for me, I really enjoyed that aspect. It gave me time to, you know, focus on, you know, when the still is running, to focus on doing other things. Now that I'm doing this full time, if the still is running, I'm like washing tanks or doing more things or bottling or those sorts of stuff. But back then it was like, okay, I can distill. It's coming out good. I can actually taste what's coming off the still. And I can also, like, I don't know, read a book or do my studies at the same time. I was like, sure, why not? And then that transformed into me delving deep into the literature, reading a whole bunch of books, following a whole bunch of famous distillers and well-known distillers in the US, just reading a lot of their papers and articles that they've put out. I'm really a self-taught distiller. I did an online course at the IBD, so the Institute of Brewing and Distilling. So I have that theoretical knowledge, but there's a lot of that in the theoretical knowledge. There's a lot that isn't taught in terms of like, which I could talk about later, because we have a continuous column, how to run a continuous column, what to expect. If your continuous column goes kaput, how are you gonna, fix it? What types of products can you make? And I think me not having that traditional distiller's, learning experience and being really self-taught has really lent my idea to creating unique and different spirits, and developing my own identity in making these products. So right now I'm 25. I've been doing this for about 7 years now, like distilling for 7 years now, and I'm the head distiller, so I make everything from A to Z here. And we're a lot of distilleries, the whole question is grain to bottle or neutral grain spirit, or what are you doing in that area? But for us, we're a unique version of grain to bottle.
Yeah.
We have a big sustainability model involved in our distillery. Yeah.
Speaking of the sustainability model, I know you wanted to mention it. Please go ahead. Tell me all about that.
So the sustainability model really came about when myself and my brother, my brother is about 3 years younger than me, so he's 22, came about because we wanted to do something that was more environmentally friendly with our business, or with the distillery. And we really wanted to create something that was sustainable, something that we can say is, we're trying to do our part. Because I'll be honest, craft distilleries are not that sustainable. You're using the same amounts of energy, the same amounts of waste, same amounts of emissions to do your fermentation and your mashing that, big breweries and other breweries are doing right now and wineries are doing for their product. And what do you do with all that spent grain? I mean, yeah, you have a lot of spent grain, but if you're a small craft distillery, you're not going to be. It's difficult to find a farmer or anyone to take that grain from you. So it ends up, compost, or even worse, I've heard of some distilleries putting it into landfills. And it's like, how do you remove that aspect? And I came across, at the height of the pandemic, an article from a French. I forget where the article was, but it was I could probably find it, but. It was a French winery that couldn't sell over 100,000 liters of wine, like ready to go wine, like it's good, but he couldn't sell it because it was all of his international contracts had dried up in the pandemic. No one was shipping, no one was buying. It was one of those, at the height of the pandemic in the early 2020, it was rough. No one knew what was going on. Everyone stopped their purchase orders. Everyone just stopped everything. So then he had wine that he couldn't keep because, unlike, booze and high proof spirits, like fermented products are perishable. Like they will go bad after a certain amount of time if not kept in pristine storage conditions. So for us, for when I read that article, he had dumped over 100,000 liters of wine. He had to destroy over 100,000 liters of wine. And I read that article and I said, well, there must have been some distillery that could have taken it to transform it into a brandy or some sort of spirit and just make it a finished product and, work with the winery or distill it for him and he can figure out what to do with it. But no, the issue is that when you have volumes that large, for most craft distilleries and most distilleries who are running on pot stills, you can pot still, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 liters at a time, but 100,000 liters, that's a lot of time. You're talking about like more than 2 months worth of work. And that was the other idea that led to our sustainability model, which was how can we prevent this from ever happening again? How can we prevent this wastage of product that, either can't be sold but is still good for distilleries, or could be sold but isn't being sold for a reason or another? And how can we process it and turn it into an extremely efficient method or in an extremely efficient way? And for us, that was one, working with breweries who, craft breweries, big breweries, any type of Quebec breweries that have a batch that goes bad or a batch that they can't sell or so and so and so. So instead of them dumping it down the drains into the city sewers, we recoup it. And the other thing was to process it efficiently, continuous distillation. We looked at pot stills. We looked at large efficiency pot stills. So, pot stills in the 5,000, 6,000 liter range. And the one thing that kept coming back to us was, if we want to produce this into a neutral grain spirit to work with most finished products, and in the distilling industry, most products are made from neutral grain spirit or just from a neutral spirit at 95%. We can't get there with a pot still, even with the 24 plate large columns and the 23 feet high still. You just you just can't. It's rough to get it there, and continuous distillation is the only way to do it. So we knew we wanted to do this idea. We had to get a continuous still to do it. The idea was, how do we find a continuous still now? The only manufacturers of real continuous stills to make neutral spirits were either large industrial guys, which, as a small distillery, there isn't a lot of capital, free capital to invest in CapEx, especially in Quebec. And also, getting a seven column system that can be sitting outside, that's working off of grain silos or large fermenting grain silos. It's not feasible for us.
Especially in Canada, I'm assuming.
Oh, no, yeah. Especially, I'm kind of in that mix of there's some residential near here, and there's industrial. So it's I don't think they really wanted biodiesel, biofuel, ethanol distillation, a couple of blocks away from the residential school zone.
Probably not.
No. So for us, it was, okay, we need to look at smaller systems. And systems made specifically for the distilling industry, and not just biofuel, ethanol fuel, or just pure ethanol manufacturing. So we looked at some options. We looked at Vendôme has one. So Vendôme Distilling down in Kentucky, I believe, they have a continuous column system, but it's not really made to make neutral spirits. It's made more to make light whiskeys or high spirit whiskeys. So that was off the table for us. We looked at Barrison, which is a manufacturer out in Europe. The issue with Barrison is that their systems are 30 feet high, and it wasn't feasible. We have a 13-foot ceiling height, and we weren't about to blow a hole in 12 inches of concrete and build a skylight. So that left us with two options on the table. The first option was a company out of Montana, Montana, called Headframe Distilling. And they specialize in making compact 3-column distillation stills to make all sorts of range of whiskeys. So light whiskeys, rums, tequilas, and vodkas. So distilling up to 95%, and neutral grain spirit, but in a compact form. So fitting under 20 feet, and in a small footprint. So that was our option for us. And when we looked at that option, we were like, it's great, but we'd love to work with a Canadian company, support local. There's a great Canadian distillery, great Canadian manufacturers around. And I stumbled upon one back actually in late 2019, when they started and they were advertising on the ADI forum, called Revival Stillworks out in Sydney, BC.
Okay,
they're just outside of Victoria, BC. And I contacted them, and it was started by these two amazing guys, Darcy and Brandon, and I contacted them in early 2020, and I was like, hey, we're a distillery in Montreal, Quebec. We're looking at buying a continuous column. You advertise it on your site. Is this something that you guys can do? And I remember getting a call back from the owners, Brandon and Darcy, and they were like, yeah, we could do this, but it's more of an R&D thing. And we, over the next about 2 years, 2 years worth of work, we worked with them closely to build and design this column, this 13-foot 3-tower continuous still, to process 5% beer that we recoup, or between 5 to 7% beer that we recoup from these breweries that can't be sold, and transform it into neutral grain spirit. So that is actually, that neutral grain spirit that we recoup from the bad beer is what we use as our base spirit for all of our products moving forward now. It really is a zero waste model, and it is really efficient and affordable for us to do so as well.
Yeah, no, we need this kind of stuff to keep the planet going. I mean, it's not a great place. Do you see adding renewable energy as well at some point, maybe some solar panels?
So renewable energy is something that we would love to do. luckily in Quebec, most of the electricity comes from hydropower, so we kind of already have that clean energy source already available. You know, we don't get our energy source from coal or oil burning or natural gas burning or anything like that. But being self-sustaining and self-sufficient on our own energy sources would be the next step that we would like to take. It's just, you know, like looking outside right now, it's a bit difficult to run the big months of manufacturing on solar panels when there's like 13 inches of snow outside.
I worked in solar for a bit, and it's like, how good is this in Canada? I'm like, it's not. To be honest. I mean, the technology's not there yet. Hopefully it does get there so that it's a lot more efficient. You know, there's talks of, I think it's IKEA doing like roof shingles as solar panels, and like that's a great idea, but you need that big battery. So
yeah, big battery, and also, you know, the challenges of being in Quebec is how do you get rid of that, you know, when 13 inches of snow are on your roof, how do you remove that safely and in a safe manner? Because, you know, most people who have them aren't about to climb up on the roof and shovel a roof.
No, for sure. Why 1769 Distillery and not your last name Distillery or family name or something like that?
I should have said that at the beginning.
It's okay.
That's a good question. So 1769, actually, it's pretty straightforward. It was the year of the first legally recorded distillery in the province of Quebec. So before then, you know, distilling probably was around. They don't really keep documentation of these sorts of things. But in 1769 in Saint-Roch in Quebec City, there was the first legally recorded distillery in the province. And they made whiskey and rum mostly from all of the imports of the molasses, grain, and any sorts of materials that they got from elsewhere. Okay. You know, wheats, barley, those sorts of things.
So it's got a historic value to it.
Yeah, we picked it for its historical value, and also we were one of the first Quebec craft distilleries, actually. We're one of the pioneers of the craft distilling industry in Quebec. At the time, there were only five other craft distilleries who were starting out. There was, who had licenses. It was us, it was a Cidrerie Michel Jaudoin, it was Paul Circa Distillery, Le Subversif, which made Piget Henricus, and Domaine Pinnacle, which made Ungava.
Okay.
So we were one of the original five. I think it was five. You know, basically it just grew from there. Now we're like 100 plus micro distilleries in the province, which is like, I think the biggest boom of micro distilleries in all of Canada. Like it's insane.
Yeah, it's hard for us as a show to even like keep up with just like, oh, let's discover a new distillery, a new cidery, and vineyards in the new year. But it's like, oh my God, there's so much. So even breweries, I mean, there's over 300 and something now in Quebec. We're getting up near 500 in Ontario.
Yeah, there's a lot, but it's great though too because it leads to a lot of innovation. You know, the downside with the distilling industry in Quebec is that, you know, we've all got to go through the SAQ. We don't have any choice. You know, only in 2018 were we granted the right by the government to sell from our tasting room, and even then we have to remit everything that we sell back to the SAQ. It's as if we are just another sales point for the SAQ. But the beauty in that is it forces distilleries to be innovative, and it forces us to think outside the box. It still sucks. I will say it's not a beautiful system, and it definitely is far from perfect for how many distilleries we are. But it allows us to think, okay, well, you know, we can't just do another London Dry Gin. Yeah. Let's try something else. We can't just do another vodka. Let's try something else. And that's you know, where our sustainability model really sets us apart from all other distilleries, is that no other distillery has that, you know, continuous column distilling capabilities, continuous distillation capabilities, and doesn't have that recuperation of fermented product sustainability aspect in their business. So that's where we're really proud of that.
Speaking of trying another product.
Oh, yes. So, So, are you a big gin guy? Because we mostly do gins here.
Not a huge gin guy, honestly. I'm more of a whiskey, scotch type drinker, but I do enjoy craft alcohols in general. So I won't say no to it. I'm more than willing to try something new.
Do you like tea?
Do I like what?
Tea?
Yes.
Okay, so you'll like this one. So we do our Madison Park product again, but we and this one is actually like this is one of our flagship products, is our Madison Park Breakfast Gin, which is why called Breakfast Gin.
With breakfast.
We distill it. It's the same botanicals as our London Dry Gin, but we include bergamot in the distillation, and then we infuse it with black tea, so it has an Earl Grey taste to it, hence the name Breakfast Gin.
Yeah.
And actually the owner, Andrew, my dad, his mom, so my grandmother, never let him drink coffee in the morning. He only was allowed to drink tea growing up.
Okay.
So hence the name breakfast as well. It has a lot of, some little fun significance for him.
Very cool.
So this is really, really something unique and something that we're really happy with. Funny story, actually. The idea for this product came about because we were doing an event in minus 30 degree weather. I had to brew tea in minus 30 degree weather to mix with the London Dry Gin. And I was just so fed up about like freezing my fingers off that I was like, you know what? Screw this. Why don't I just put the tea in the gin to begin with and I don't have to brew it?
Yeah. Another innovation, as you said.
Yeah. Cheers.
A toast. Oh, yeah.
So you got the bergamot, citrus, so the bitterness of the bergamot. You got the sweetness of the black tea. You've got the botanicals there as well. And why this one has picked up a lot for us is for mixologists. Montreal has a thriving bar scene and even like not speakeasies, but just a thriving craft bar scene.
Yeah.
And mixologists love working with the Breakfast Gin because it offers something extremely unique for them to work with. One of the biggest things that they have a lot of fun with is, they have a lot of fun with is they use it in bitter cocktails because the tea really just neutralizes the bitterness, so it brings the gin forward. So in a Negroni, for example, oftentimes if you're using a gin, like a classic London Dry style gin, the Campari can oftentimes overpower the botanicals in the gin. The Breakfast Gin, what happens is the tea really neutralizes that Campari's bitterness, keeps the sweetness of Campari, but also allows the botanicals of the gin to be elevated in the cocktail. But at the same time, it makes perfect simple cocktails as well. My brother and I just drink this with lemonade. And we're actually doing a ready-to-drink, a canned beverage next summer with our Breakfast Gin as an iced tea, as a hard iced tea.
Yeah. See, and those are good to have too, those ready-to drinks. When we interviewed Distillery Trois Lacs, he's like, yeah, I have this pink lemonade gin. I'm like, I can never just picture myself drinking this. And I have a few sips. I'm like, well, it's winter, which is weird, but I would crush a bunch of these during the summer. Because it's like 5%, it's nice and balanced. So I'm sure what you guys come up, a lemonade too during the summer, that's perfect summer drink. In cans, super easy to transport. So.
Yeah. It's, and hard iced tea is a big growing category. For the longest time, we avoided doing canned cocktails, mostly because we wanted to focus on our bottled spirits. But also at the same time, we're distillers. We don't usually deal with carbonation. And I think one of the biggest things that separates, that separated us from a lot of other distilleries was that we wanted to really focus on what we knew how to do best, which was gins, finished like high ABV spirits, now liqueurs, and focus on that. And the RTD was really, it was an idea that we had for a good 3-4 years, but we never really had the chance to capitalize on it because it was, we do everything here. We like to do everything here. So, you have to buy the canning line. You have to buy the pressurized tanks. You have to buy the dose, because it's not carbonated, you have to buy the nitrogen doser. You have to buy the chiller. There's a lot of purchases involved, and it was just something for us as a distillery. We were like, is this, for doing one canned cocktail, is this something that we want to do? Luckily, we found another distillery that we're going to work with who is phenomenal and has some experience doing canned cocktails. So we're working with them to get that out there.
Speaking of that kind of, you're collabing with another distillery. Who are some people you'd love to collab with in the industry?
In the industry?
Yeah.
Oh man,
I mean, I'm talking like even because your sustainability project, you mentioned you grab beer from other brewers. Who are some of those brewers, and then who else have you worked? Who have you worked with, and who would you like to?
So unfortunately, I can't mention the breweries that we're working with. They, as you could probably imagine, with how much beer I receive, these breweries would kind of like to remain anonymous.
That's more than fair.
So I can't say that, but what I can say is that the other people I would love to be working with in this industry, we used to make a whiskey. We're still trying to get back into the bump of making whiskey, but the situation was that during the pandemic, barrels became hard to find. Used bourbon barrels became hard to find. The waiting list used to be long. We were never buying a lot to begin with, so it was constantly just this like, oh well, you didn't have an agreement with us. You gotta wait in line. And the wait lists were like when I started seriously looking, the wait lists were all the way to 2023. So for me personally, I would love to be working with a distillery, a craft distillery down in the States that is doing bourbons, so American whiskeys, fresh dumped, can't use the barrel again, and working with one that's really, really good. Some of my favorite bourbons right now, I love Old Scout, so Smooth Ambler is maybe one of my favorite American bourbons right now. I know it was bought by Pernod Ricard recently, or a couple of years ago, but I'd still love to work with them. Rabbit Hole is one of my all-time favorite bourbons that I'm just loving right now, especially their High Gold, which is their 75 corn. I believe they're 75 corn, 20 rye, and like malted barley and wheat. I believe it's just phenomenal. So working with American distilleries that are doing a lot of whiskeys. I'd love to do something, work with them and even if it's just a supply agreement of like, I'll take your barrels after you're done, or like, well, we could work on something else here for the Canadian market. Other breweries as well, we work with some breweries right now, but like always working with new breweries, because every craft brewery has different styles of beers. And what I've noticed too is that even when distilling up to neutral, you get very distinct characters. It's not just like you're distilling malted barley and that's it. The hops, the types of barley, the types of grains that are used, the type of yeast strains that are used are so impact the flavor of your spirit so much that like I'd love to be working with a lot more breweries now. I think one of the coolest ones, we're not working with them now, but I think one of the coolest breweries to work with would be McCausland, because Saint Ambroise is such a large Quebec beer, so I'd love to work with them. Wineries now, cideries too.
Yeah, McCausland just distilled a.
McCausland does have a distillery now.
But are they working with? Because I know Circa is like literally right across.
I don't think so. Okay. I think they're self-contained within the distillery. But give me a call. I'll distill all your stuff for you.
I mean, maybe I'll have to bother them. I've enjoyed a few too many pints on their terrace. Yeah. So I think they owe me. Yeah. I think they owe a lot of Quebecers, because that terrace is something else.
Yeah, it's a beautiful campus that they have there. It is beautiful.
I know it's more private events you do in your tasting room and stuff. If the option were there and weren't such a pain in the butt to get going, to kind of have people, just don't even have to have it open that, let's say 5 to 11, to have people come in, enjoy a few cocktails and go.
I'm technically not allowed to do that under the laws. So the way the laws work in Quebec are, as a distillery, I'm allowed to offer my tasting. I'm allowed to offer a tiny mixer with that tasting. I'm allowed to, offer my tours and tastings. I'm allowed to sell my bottle, but I can't just open my front door and say, hey, come in like a tap. I can't just open my front door and run it like a tap room. I've got to, if I'm going to do that, I've got to, go through the hoops of, this is a private event. It's closed door. I had to sell tickets. I have to advertise that it's a private event. It's like, I can advertise a little 5 à 7. But it's not just something like a tap room for a brewery where you say your opening hours are this, and come in and enjoy a beer. It really is something that every time I want to do something like that, I've got to put a lot of pre-planning into. Okay. And it's we're trying to get the government to change it, but there's a lot of like hidden things that are roadblocks for us as an industry.
The alcohol industry in general in Quebec, I find there's still a lot of old laws on the books that we just need to get rid of.
Yeah.
That, to me, are because I'm a consumer and I love to consume the products. In my eyes, they're just pointless. And I'm sure as a business owner yourself and project manager, head distiller, it's like, come on, you guys are literally kind of taking money out of my pocket here because that's $1,000 there a day, $1,000 when you think about it. So.
Yeah, it definitely, in my mind, the monopoly of the SAQ hurts the consumer more than it helps them. Mm-hmm. And I know the SAQ will come out and say, we're trying, and I give them credit. They do what they do the best that they can do, and they love doing what they can. They love working with Quebec craft distilleries because it's there's no overseas shipping. We're right at the door. We had a driver here yesterday pick up a shipment, and it's just simple. It's drive from the warehouse, come pick up here, go back. It's not like there's no large supply chain organized like issues that you have to like figure out. So they love working with us. They love the innovation that Quebec Spirits are offering. But the issue with the SAQ is that our offerings, Quebec Distilleries offerings, are so vast. And the shelf space for Quebec distilleries for the spirits category at the SAQs are so small that, and they're getting even smaller because there's space concerns. They can't offer everything as much as they would like to offer everything to the consumer. They just can't. So you guys, as the consumer, end up, going to an SAQ and you're like, well, I only have these choices available. And if none of those choices fancy you, you're kind of SO.
Yeah.
You're out of luck.
Yeah.
And that's the big concern. And even when you come to the distillery, let's say you want to get a distillery specific product, like for us, we sell all of our products at the SAQ, but some of our new unique, mostly whiskeys that we're going to be releasing in the next couple of years are only going to be available at the distillery. And yes, we're in Montreal, but where we are located in Montreal is a tad hard to get to for, anyone living in downtown or anyone living in the northern part of the island. Mm-hmm. So it's that idea of okay, well, how do you is there a way that you can offer everything? And e-commerce doesn't work. E-commerce is not a thing in Canada. It doesn't, it's offered, but it's when it comes to the booze industry. Yeah, when it comes to the booze industry, it's rough to get going because you need to hit your minimum orders, and then and also the margin that they take makes spirits significantly more expensive for the consumer. I'll take for example, our two premium product gins, our Royal Mount. At the SAQ they retail for $51. I can tell you right now that if the margins were different, I could easily retail that for $41.40. Yeah. The same price that Hendrix goes for down in the States. It's it's laws. It's these archaic laws that really hamper the options the consumers have, which really kind of sucks. Yeah. No, we need to. Like I said, we need almost like federal but provincial law. It needs to all work together. Yeah. You're able to export your products to the other provinces, right? Yes. Okay. So right now, our Royal Mount Gin, our cucumber and rose flavored Royal Mount Gin, which was our answer to wanted to do a cucumber gin. Mm-hmm. So it was our premium cucumber gin. We shipped that one to Alberta. So we're sold in Edmonton and around other cities in Alberta. We're sold in Jack's, the private liquor store at Jack's in BC. So Vancouver, the Vancouver area and a bit around there. And we're sold in Quebec. We're working on trying to get it back into Ontario because the LCBO is other story. So we're trying to get that back into the LCBO and into the Ontario market because we spent a lot of time there trying to build our brand. So we ship outside. And shipping outside is not overly difficult, but because it's still within bonds, so you don't have excise issues across the provinces. But it's still, Quebec is my hometown. Quebec is, the home market for my products, and it's the SAQ's monopoly is very difficult to get all my offerings out to the consumer.
You want to try one more product here?
Yeah, for sure. So, we make gin, but I'll switch to something a bit more interesting. Yeah. Something that we're the only distillery in the province to make. We do a peanut butter whiskey liqueur. So, as probably a lot of everyone knows, peanut butter whiskey is a big thing in the United States. It's starting to be, it's a big thing with Screwball in Ontario, out west, yes, but in Quebec, it never really picked up on the big brands. So like Screwball, Sheepdog, all these big brands never really picked up. Mm-hmm. But I realized that I wanted to make something that was more authentic. A lot of these big brands, what they do is they say they're peanut butter whiskey, but they use clever marketing.
Okay.
Of saying, you're not allergic to peanuts, I hope.
Oh, no.
Okay, that's good to know.
No, I'm just allergic to cats and nature.
Oh, yeah, same.
Whoa.
So we wanted to make something different.
Yeah.
We use 100% real Canadian whiskey, so 3-year aged wheat distillate, so a light Canadian whiskey. And then we use real peanut flavors and real peanut butter flavors in the blending afterwards to make this peanut butter whiskey liqueur. We really didn't want to just cheap out and do the neutral grain spirit with caramel coloring, whiskey flavor,
awesome.
All those things. Cheers.
Toast. That is very unique and very tasty.
Yeah. So it has that reminiscence of the great American peanut butter whiskeys on the market, but I just wanted to do it with higher quality ingredients. Wow. And for the price point of $37.75, I think it turned out really nice.
Yeah, that's pretty delicious.
Yeah.
The truck out front. What made you guys decide to do that truck that you guys have?
Oh, the little car?
Yeah, the little car.
So when we started in like 2015, 2016, my dad, massive car nut. Like he had at one point, I think like 30 plus vintage Italian cars. Most of them weren't working, but he just collected cars. And when we started the distillery and he, downsized, he kind of went through he had the reverse midlife crisis where he was like, I'm not going to just buy a whole bunch of cars. I'm going to sell all my cars and start making booze.
Okay.
He sold all those cars, but one of the ones that he kept was that little escargot out there. And we decided, it's a cool little car. It's unique. It catches people's eye. So we put our stickers, our brands on it, and our distillery name on it, and we would drive it around town. And if we do a tasting, or we were like, we knew we were going to be downtown for a bit, or like in around the Atwater Market or some of the big SAQs, we just park it in front of an SAQ and like kind of come back 3 hours later. It
draws the eye. So.
It would draw the eye,
yeah.
And I think I'd love to try that again because we did that in 2015, but it was always a hassle to park the car, come back, leave it. It was just difficult. Yeah. So we put it in storage. It's not drivable. It's still drivable, but like we need to fix it up again. But
festivals are back too, so we'll see. I don't know about this year's La Cuvée if gin's making it this year or it's another alcohol. La Cuvée is a beer / liquor festival downtown. So
it must be right. Like gin is such a large category in Quebec. That's one of the things that we're looking at doing a lot more is we kind of really got, like at the time when we started, beer festivals were really our only type of festivals that we can do, other than the big wine festivals. And I always enjoyed the beer festivals more than the wine festivals because it was a lot more interpersonal. It was a lot more fun. It was a lot more like, hey, what goes well with this beer, or what's something that you can do with this? Whereas with the wine festivals, you can still kind of get that vibe, but it's like, oh, well, I've had 3 reds that are all in the $70 category, and now I want to try an alcohol, but I don't like gin and I don't like hard alcohol. Yeah. I'm like, guys, come on.
I do, especially with beer now, like the variety, I do find beer drinkers are a little more adventurous than wine drinkers, cider drinkers as well now. Like we've been getting into Quebec ciders, and it's crazy.
The cider world is just so out there, man. Yeah. They come up with some of the craziest stuff I've ever had, like tequila flavored ciders, maple syrup flavored ciders. I'm like, where did you guys come up with these ideas? I love them.
I mean, you were also coming out like the peanut butter. I know you say it's basing it on an American peanut butter whiskey, but still, it's the only product you said like this in Quebec. And I was like, whoa, this I gotta find. Yeah. I'm sure my father would love this. So.
Yeah. Well, like I said, all of our products are at the SAQs. It's just a matter of finding an SAQ that has it. So, but that's something that we got to keep working on, is just getting the distribution up and getting products into more stores and on more shelves and stuff like that. But
so what I saw is you have like a couple of kind of homemade cocktail with the little barrel things. How do those work?
So those actually, we used to do cocktails in a barrel for bars.
Okay.
So we would pre-batch a cocktail because bars can't pre-batch cocktails and sell them to the consumer. Mm-hmm. It's in Quebec, they consider that a health hazard. So what we did was we pre-batched the cocktail for the bar, put it in the barrel, shipped it to the SAQ. The SAQ opens these 18-liter barrels and they're like, what the hell is this? They call us, they're like, oh, well, what is this? And we're like, oh, it's for a bar. They're like, oh, okay. So they tag it, they test it, whatever. And then they put it on the shelf. And we did this for a while, which was a maple old fashioned or a Negroni in a barrel, where we would pre-batch those cocktails with our own products. And it would age on the shelf over the month that the bar or the restaurant would use it. But in terms of like cocktails, like simple, easy cocktails, we're mostly a gin distillery. So there's 3 cocktails that usually every gin needs to work with, and at least 2 of them need to knock it out of the park for it to be considered a great gin recipe. That's the gin and tonic, the martini, and the Negroni.
Okay.
So basically, gin and tonic, 2 ounces gin, 3/4 of the glass is tonic water with ice, with either your garnish that, oftentimes you want to pick a garnish that is related to the flavor or the main taste of the gin or one of the ingredients in the gin. So like one of the biggest things that drives me absolutely nuts is like when a gin and tonic will have the, be a juniper gin, like juniper, coriander, orange peel, like citruses, and angelica, which is a very umami and like kind of very like rooty botanical. They would put a cucumber in it. And I'm like, no, put the orange peel. Yeah. Put like something else.
And usually it's like the orange peel twist.
Yeah. Like save the cucumber for the cucumber gin. Like put it, the cucumber works in Hendrix. Or like in Royal Mount. Like don't put the cucumber in the Madison Park London Dry. So it's like, that for me is like picking the garnish that really will complement the botanicals. So that's a gin and tonic. The martini is a pretty simple, 1/4 ounce vermouth, 3 ounces of gin, shake or stirred, and then poured in a glass. However, my favorite type of martini to make is a Vesper martini. So it's the James Bond martini, which is a 1/4 ounce Lillet, which is a fortified wine, which you could get at the SAQ. I don't know if it's still available, but I have a bottle hidden somewhere in my house. 2 ounces of gin and 1 ounce of vodka. So you usually want to do a 2-to-1 of gin and vodka, and it just really is a great. I love that cocktail. I love that martini. It's my go-to martini whenever I'm at a steakhouse or whenever I'm at somewhere, and I'm like, I'm gonna have a nice glass of wine, but I want a classy, like good cocktail to begin with. And then there's the Negroni, which is the 2 ounce gin, 1-1-1. So 1 ounce gin, 1 ounce vermouth, 1 ounce Campari. And that's a great cocktail too. My friend loves that one. But at the same time, simple is always the easiest. So gin tonic or with lemonade, or with in the breakfast gin's case, lemonade. So that's usually where we go with.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So what's next for yourself in 1769 as a brand?
We have a lot of interesting projects coming up in 2023. One of them actually, so we're starting to put away a lot of whiskey, waiting for barrels still, because barrels are...
The law in Canada, 7 years?
3 years for it to be considered a Canadian whiskey.
Okay.
And technically I can release it before, but I can't call it a Canadian whiskey.
Moonshine.
I could call it a whiskey, actually. In the law, in the federal law, it literally says that you can call it a whiskey, but you can't call it a Canadian whiskey.
Okay.
The nomenclature in the law is very different from the American style nomenclature, where where it's like, vodka has to be distilled up to like 190 proof, and it has to be odorless and colorless and tasteless and like, be a high quality spirit. And like in Canada, it's basically just saying it has to be tasteless. It has to be tasteless and have no distinctive character. It's like doesn't have to be distilled up to 190 proof or any of these things. So for us, we're going to do a Canadian whiskey. We're going to do an older Canadian whiskey, so 5-year we're looking at as well as the 3-year. We're going to bring back our Canadian whiskey that we had beforehand, and we're going to put away a lot more whiskeys. And actually, one of the things that I'd love you to try is this new spirit, actually, that I'll rinse your glass for you.
Yeah.
This is actually a very new spirit, and I'd love for you to try it and tell me what you think it is.
Just to let you know, I'm not like a fancy palate or anything. I'm
no, that's
palate.
fine.
I know what I like. I know what I don't like. So.
But I want you to try this and tell me what you think it is, because this is something that we're going to be releasing in the new year.
Toast.
Cheers.
I have no idea what that is.
But it's got has a bit of an agricole taste, rum, tequila, the funkiness of tequila. Almost like a grappa.
I'm getting the rum. I'm not getting much of the tequila, personally. There's something else there. I can't tell what it is, though. It's like a rum. I think I've had that before, but I can't remember what it was called. Almost like a rum liqueur. So
this is actually our... did you find it smooth? Was it...
Yeah, no, it went down. Yeah. It went down just fine.
So... this is actually our blend of recycled beer spirits.
Really?
So this is a blend of...
almost like a beer schnapps.
Yes. So effectively, this is a blend of recycled beers, but there's no sugar added.
Okay.
It's at 47%. So what you had was at 47. And we're releasing it as our new make spirit.
Okay.
So this is basically what we're going to be we're going to be racking in a barrel, and also what we're selling. But because it has that very distinctive new make rum like agricole taste, we're releasing it as a full 100% Quebec replacement for any sort of rum cocktail that you may be making. So you can use this in a daiquiri. I have a bottle of this at 76% that I use in rum and coke. It's a perfect.
That's only one or two rum and cokes that percentage.
Yeah.
Because I recall our interview at OHAM, he made a beer schnapps, and it was recycled beer from the brewery next door, and he turned it into a schnapps.
So that the only difference is that there's no sugar added in this.
Okay,
this is straight double distillation. This is stripped on the continuous column, pot stilled immediately after, and then we do a whole bunch of different beers and we blend them together to get our notes.
Very cool.
So we're excited for that one as well.
Yeah. Just pull out like all the hoppiness and the wheating, because there's like no hoppiness that you smell.
Yeah.
Then again, most people just think the current trend in beer is like all beer is New England IPAs. I'm like, no, there's so much more.
The issue with so I'm a big beer guy, but I'm not. I'm like a faux beer guy, if that makes sense. Be like, yeah, I love craft beers, but then I get something hoppy, and I'm like, no, this is not for me.
You're a lager guy.
Yeah, I'm a lager guy. I'm a lager. I love my stouts as well. I'm a massive stout guy. And the issue that I have with a lot of the hops is because I've distilled a lot of beer, bad beer and recycled beer and beer that can't be sold for my R&D purposes. And when you distill a very hopped beer, you just get the bitterness of the hops. All the fruity notes, all of the notes that made that hop specific to that beer have disappeared or have transformed with the massive amounts of heat in the column. So for me, it's like when I taste those hops in beers, I'm kind of like, I think back to some of those bad experiences I've had distilling, and I'm like, it's a great beer, but it is just not for me.
Anything else coming up, or
no,
pretty big 2023 from the sound of it already? So.
Yeah, we got a pretty big 2023. I kind of want to take, like we were talking about distillery vacations, I want to take a vacation finally.
Yeah.
I've been working nonstop.
Plus, kind of the world really not... Yeah. I personally was getting on the plane the last 2 years, maybe now more so, but the last 2 years I'm like, no, I'm not sitting in a tube of recycled air for hours on end going somewhere. So
yeah.
No, fantastic. Alex, honestly, thank you very much for hosting us
problem.
today. Really appreciate this. Some delectable alcohols I've gotten to taste here today. For those who are looking for 1769 products and where they can find you, let them know where they can find you.
Yeah. So if you're interested at all in any of our products, you can go to our website at www.1769distillery.com. So it's 1769distillery.com. We're located in Montreal. Most of our products, all of our products are in the SAQs across the province. Some of our Royal Mount, so one of our products is located also in Alberta and Vancouver. We're trying to get some of our products into the United States, hopefully in the next couple of years. But yeah, and you can follow us on social media, Instagram primarily. We're mostly active on there.
What's the handle for the social media?
So the handle for 1769distillery.com.
So all that's going to be in the show notes. As for us, allbeerinside.com is the website, @allbeerinside on all social media. And as you say at the end of all episodes, drink craft, not crap.